Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Ladd and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 290. So we are moving towards our 300th episode, which will be around 6 years of weekly podcasts. And today we are joined by a very special guest who we were going to speak to a couple of weeks ago, and we've moved the podcast. But I'm so glad that we've got him. Pete and I have been listening to his podcast quite a lot over the last few weeks. We are joined by Professor Jonathan Sackier, who is a surgeon, an innovator, an aviator. I think that means pilot. A health commentator, chief medical advisory chairman, of the medical advisory board on the European Medical Journal. I don't know where to start with this guy, but he's a fascinating guy who has been put in touch. I was put in touch with through a mutual friend, and I'm really glad that we can introduce you to him on the podcast. Jonathan, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I feel like maybe I should just drop dead after such a nice introduction with positive words ringing in my ear.
I feel like I should have dressed up more. I should have put a suit on.
Yeah, but I'm wearing my sweatpant bottoms, mate.
The top half of you's gone to work and the bottom half has stayed at home.
But yeah, absolutely.
So Jonathan, I mean, to begin with, it's the first time we've had you on, and like I say, I've been really looking forward to talking to you. And I was listening to one of your podcasts earlier today, and it was the one where you were talking all about the medical classifications, or classifications for injuries, illnesses, diseases, that kind of thing, for insurance purposes, mainly in the US, I think. And that was a great one. And I just said to Pete before we came on that there was a medical classification number for injuries sustained while walking into a lamppost. And you'd said that one of the reasons you have these classifications is so you can spot trends and you can see things changing. Since the invent of mobile phones, the walking into lampposts has gone up substantially.
Oh, it has. Yeah. So for the benefit of those who don't know, there are two numbers as a doctor that you need, and you need them in the UK as well for, say, spotting trends. There's something called the ICD, which is the International Classification of Disease. And we're now on our 10th iteration, headed to the 11th. And basically what they do is that, so it's not just broken finger, it's which finger, on which hand, right? And how was the injury sustained? Again, so we can look for trends. And then there's something called the CPT, which is current procedural terminology. So, you would then say broken finger, splint applied, right? So the two numbers. But as life goes on and life gets more complicated, the indications of what you might write go up and up and up. There's things like burn sustained whilst water skiing, skis on fire. It's like, I'm sorry, what? But, the truth of the matter is I love to find humor in things, chaps, because laughter is actually very good for you. And it's very good for me as a doctor. And never laughing at my patients, I'm laughing at the absurdity of life. There's things like being sucked into a jet engine. That has a classification. Sadly, it happens. And people also walk into propellers when they're turning, which is never a good idea. Crazy stuff.
So when did you we'll just start talking and see where it takes us. But when did you become a pilot? When did you is this something you've been doing a long time, or is this something you've done in sort of like more recent years, or?
So I tell people, I never, what did I want to do when I was a little boy? I wanted to be an actor. I loved drama at school. And that sort of continued to be something of a passion until my last year of high school, if you will. And where a mate of mine, we put on a Tom Stoppard play called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Dead. I played Rosencrantz, he played Guildenstern. And I realized his name is Martin Ward. If you're listening, Martin was a much better actor than me. And I realized I didn't have any real talent. I just liked play acting. I also wanted to be James Bond, but apparently they weren't looking for a short Jew to play 007. And then my other passion, there was a chap when I was growing up, he lived next door to us, the flat next door, and he had been a mosquito pilot during the Second World War, and a guy upstairs had flown Spitfires. And I thought my dad, bless him, was in the infantry. And he was an armaments artificer. He fixed rifles. But these guys were pilots, and I thought they rocked. And they were also both quite short. Pilots tended to be smaller because the less load you have in the cockpit, the more load you can put in ammunition and fuel. And
I was going to say you'd have to be quite small to fly a mosquito, wouldn't you?
Very good.
Unless they're massive mosquitoes, you never know.
I wish I'd thought of that. And yeah, I started flying when I was a teenager, and sort of flew on and off. Eventually got my license, and I've flown for many, many years, and I just love it. I love the physical and mental challenge that's required. I love the poetry of it, taking off at dawn, flying through the night. I love the freedom, and I love the camaraderie. People who are pilots tend to be, in all the years I've been flying, and I've known many, many people who fly, they tend to be good and interesting people. So yeah, it's being part of a community. Like we want to have a tribe. All of us need tribes. So it's my tribe.
Excellent. And just a little bit, I suppose, about your life as a surgeon, just for context and things. I think you've got, spent a lot of time in America. I think you may even have dual citizenship with the US and the UK. What was your, I don't know if you'd call it a branch of surgery, or what was your kind of surgical specialty, and where did you do that for the majority of your career?
I trained in Britain, and we have an expression, never a prophet in your own land. I trained in what's called general surgery, and I also did work in colon and rectal surgery. I was very interested in colon cancer. But, when I was training, you did a little bit of everything. And you sort of tend to gravitate towards things that interest you. And for me, it was colon and rectal disease, cancer. But I had a couple of very influential teachers who were into using endoscopes, telescopes to do work inside the body. And that led to the genesis of what's now called minimally invasive or laparoscopic surgery. And I was very fortunate to be involved in the early days of it. And my boss at my hospital in London thought it was nonsense, didn't think it made much sense. And contemporaneously, I gave a talk at an international conference. I was a young surgeon in London, and two Americans heard my talk, and they invited me to come to Los Angeles and talk about my work. And I'm thinking, well, these people in London think I'm an idiot, and these guys in LA think I'm a genius. I'm going with LA. I'll go with LA. And they invited me to stay, and I had many wonderful experiences in America. I remember going there, and it was a February, and when I left London, it was pissing with rain, and it was grey and miserable. And I had some meetings coming up to decide how this was all going to work. And I walked down to Venice Beach, and I was sitting on the boardwalk, drinking an espresso, which strangely, they brought a little piece of lemon peel. I'd never seen that before. And there were, the beautiful people roller skating past me, and everyone seemed to be smiling. Little did I know that they were smiling because of some recreational pharmaceuticals, probably. But I ended up moving to California, and in many ways, I had a wonderful time in America. In many ways, I missed London, and I eventually came back. But I mostly practiced. I did general surgery. I did all the things surgeons do, fixing hernias, dealing with trauma. But my big thing was doing laparoscopic surgery, minimally invasive surgery. Basically, it's like magic, taking, something the size of an avocado pear out through a tiny, teeny little hole. So yeah, that was kind of fun.
And how question, actually, and it is on topic. Number one, you moved to LA, you could have become an actor as well, an acting surgeon. Imagine that.
But you know something, I got to meet a lot of people in the entertainment industry, both, initially as patients, but also met people socially and formed friendships with a lot of people in the music business. I actually, one of my mates is a prominent guitarist, and he wanted to get involved in starting a biotechnology company. And he said, obviously, I'll do something. I'll look after you. I said, his name, if you're listening, his name is Mike Einziger. He's the lead guitarist for Incubus. And
Right, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Mikey, I said to Mikey, I'll tell you what, I'll help you with the biotechnology. You teach me to play guitar and how to be a rock idol. I want to be a rock idol. And he said, yeah, something else.
One of them's easy and the other one's not going to happen.
I told him that when I was trying to learn to play guitar when I was a teenager, my guitar teacher told me it would be a service to humanity if I like the old Morecambe and Wise line. You're playing all the right notes, not necessarily.
Yeah, just a preview. No, I was gonna I was gonna ask how much surgery has changed because, and technology and all of that. Because I mentioned before we started recording, my dad died of cancer like 2004. What's that? 22 years ago. And he might have survived now, like, because technology moved on a hell of a lot in that, even in the last few years. But there's someone, so I mentioned I've got a walking group as well. There's someone who comes on the walking group, and her husband had a liver transplant, which we were talking about before we recorded as well, like liver transplants and stuff. It's a genetic thing in his family. He's got a certain liver problem. It's in the liver. So he's had a transplant, and then it was only, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago. And he's going to be okay. I think the thing, like, once you have the liver transplant, that's it. It was in the liver's come out and he's got a new one. What I didn't know was he'd been in and out 3 or 4 times, because I thought you just had like livers in a freezer. And then, you'd be like, oh, someone needs a liver transplant. We'll stick, but it's not. It's like there's someone on life support or something. And then it all has to be done within a certain time. But she said, there's a way that they test the liver. They keep it running for like 7 hours or something and test it. And then if the liver fails, the person's come in for the transplant, but the liver fails. And then they go, right, you can go home now. We're not going to do the transplant. And she said 2 years ago, that liver would have been transplanted into him because they wouldn't have tested it in the way. So even in the last 2 years, the technology has moved on. So that's specific to this thing. But how fast is it all moving?
To give you a perspective, when I started being involved in minimally invasive surgery in the 80s, there were no journals about this topic. There were no medical meetings about this topic. There were no textbooks. I was very fortunate to be involved in writing the first few textbooks on the topic. Today, there are numerous societies, multiple journals, tens of thousands of peer-reviewed articles published every year. The technology develops in a logarithmic fashion. 10 times, 10 times, 10 times, 10 times. I mean, I've been involved in developing some robotics, and we're currently developing a robot to do complex neurosurgery, brain surgery, inside an MRI unit, potentially totally automating the surgery, potentially. You mentioned your late dad. My late dad also had lung cancer. Today, there is a screening program that started in Britain, actually. We do some things well here, some things. And it basically, under the NHS, if you were a smoker, you can have a special CT scan of your chest, which will look for lung cancer when it's the size of a grain of rice. And you can then excise it and basically change the outcome of lung cancer dramatically. It used to be, by the time you got diagnosed, it was when you were coughing up blood, right?
Yeah.
And then by that point, it's large, it's invaded local structures, and it's probably spread. So yes, medicine is phenomenal. What we can do, and we talk about healthcare. It's not healthcare, it's disease care. Largely what we do is look after people once they've been shot, once they've been stabbed, once they've had a motor vehicle accident, once they've got cancer. I remember I was on duty up in Glasgow in the emergency room. Actually, no, I was working at a unit doing neurosurgery. I was on duty the day the seatbelt law came into effect. And that day, our admissions to the emergency room went poof. People used to go flying through windshields and suffer terrible injuries. Airbags, they came along. They made a dramatic thing. If you look at the biggest impacts on human health in the last 100 years, it's actually not us. It's a safe water supply, a safe food supply, and a lot of people are not going to like what I'm going to say, vaccines. Vaccines have saved millions and millions of life, and contrary to all the BS out there, they do not cause autism. They do not cause inflammatory bowel disease. It's BS. And so finding
it's BS, not IBS.
Not IBS. Sky is very fast.
I've been listening to. Is it Nigel on your
yeah,
podcast?
It is.
The other guy. I've been listening. I'm like, right. I want to be him.
Nigel and I have known each other since the first day of med school many moons ago, and I've said to Nigel, because he does this constantly, I said to Nigel, sometimes we spend a lot of time together. Sometimes it's exhausting being near you. I said, I can't imagine how exhausting it must be being you, because his brain is always going, phew, and like seeing these associations. It's very funny.
Because we just on what we'll go into this in a little bit, I think, Jonathan, because this is so interesting. We have a guy on the podcast quite a lot who's a strength coach from America, from Utah, and he's nearly 70 now. His name's Dan John, but he's been involved in he's a discus thrower and an athletics coach and things at nearly 70 now. And he says, and this is, I'd love to get your perspective, 'cause it's kind of similar to what you were saying, that longevity, and I can't remember the exact percentages, but it's so much is attributed to potentially where you live, to things that you actually do, and genetics and bad luck, and so he says the things that you can do that most dramatically impact it is wear a seatbelt, wear a crash helmet, don't smoke, all the kind of the simple kind of big things. But in terms of your work and your thought processes on this, like you said, most of what actually happens in the NHS, for example, is sick care and disease management, really. In terms of being proactive and what our listeners can actually do themselves, where do you kind of what kind of can you talk about that potentially?
Yeah, I mean, I went through a pretty crappy time in my life a number of years back, and it was pretty grim, really. It was a divorce, and unlike Gwyneth Paltrow, who I believe had a conscious uncoupling, no, this was not that.
And you didn't produce any candles that
I
smelled
did not
things as
produce
well.
any candles or things that smelled like a body part. No, I did not.
I don't know of any bloke that's done that, actually. She's obviously done it. I can't imagine anyone wants. Anyway.
Well, just as an aside, Pete, I started work on a project which I'm hoping I'm going to see reach fruition. A book, a sort of a guidebook for men on thinking about relationships and thinking about that part of their life. And I hope it will come out not in a preachy or sanctimonious way, but in a funny way. But when I went through that period of my life, and it was miserable, it was terrible. But when I came out of it, and with the help of some wonderful friends, and big shout out to Dove Barron, who really helped me process many aspects. So there are the things that you've talked about, the things that the genes you inherit. By the way, your genes do change by your environment. Okay, so we know that, of course. But the things that matter, that really, really matter, were beautifully encapsulated in the Blue Zone concept.
Yep.
How do people live in Sardinia and Sicily and mostly the Mediterranean, but also in Loma Linda in California. So there are things you eat, okay? Don't eat anything that comes from a package. By the way, this is a plastic bottle, but it's tap water because that's most of what they are anyway. What you eat, yes, exercise, meaningful exercise. Going to the gym is all fine and dandy, but just we were talking earlier about walking. Just walk places, right? You can do that. But, and obviously don't smoke, drink in moderation, blah, blah, blah. But the things that one of the biggest things that matters is your attitude to life and human relationships. Loneliness is a killer. It literally is a killer. And as three males on this call, mental illness in men is a huge problem and getting worse. There's an American author, Scott Galloway, who's I'd love to chat with Scott one of these days. He's written books about the increase of erosion of male health based on things like spending too much time looking at bloody screens, swiping right and left, not going up and talking to people, building enduring human relationships, combating loneliness. People who are lonely, it's said to be equivalent to smoking 10 cigarettes a day. So people do that, and people say, well, I don't know how to meet people. Yeah, you do. Think about things like, what do you like doing? I like playing chess. Where do you play chess? Online. Screw that. Find a club where you can go. In London, there's loads of places in parks where they've got chess tables set up, stone tables. People on a Sunday morning, people go and meet other people for a pickup game of chess or paddle or tennis or walking groups. Find ways to interact with fellow human beings. Have your tribe. Develop a purpose. I was given a book recently called Ikigai, which is the Japanese sense of purpose, a life lived with purpose. And that's important, defining what your purpose is in life and defining the rules you'll live by. I would say that's the final element. And I came up with my 5 rules of how to live my life. And if you're...
Can you share them with us? Or
well, if you're very good. They are in reverse order. Number 5, drum roll. Success is far preferable to the alternative. So I've stolen the NASA expression, failure is not an option. I've done failure. I don't like failure. I've done failure in business. I've done failure professionally. I've done failure in relationships. And just as a pilot and as a surgeon, we have an expression about staying in front of the aeroplane. Or in surgery, we think about what's the worst possible thing that can happen if I cut here. Staying ahead, thinking through the results of your actions, thinking about how you speak to people, thinking about how you behave, thinking about what you do and do not accept to do. Actually, I'll make a book recommendation, The Art of Not Giving Up by Miss Knight. Is it Sheila Knight, Sylvia, Sandra Knight? Can't remember the girl's name. Brilliant, brilliant. I've read it several times. I've bought it for many people. It's about learning to say no. I don't want to do that. That's not a good use of my time. That's a failure. Who was it? It was Nelson Mandela who said, I never fail. I never lose. I either win or I learn. So failure is not an option. That's rule number 5. Rule number 4 is leave the world a better place. If you see a homeless person and you stop and chat to them, maybe give them some money, maybe buy them a sandwich, but just stop and chat to them. 2 people feel better. They feel better because they've been seen. You feel better. So leave the world a better place.
There's a thing on that. I was talking to a guy the other day, a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about billionaires and people not paying tax and all this sort of stuff. And he's like, they could take their money and use it to do good. And I'm like, you could do that as well. He's just had half his house rebuilt, this guy. Yeah. He earns a lot of money, all of that. And I was like, you could do that. He goes, yeah, but I'm not going to make a difference. And I was like, if you do it, you can make a difference to hundreds, if not thousands of people's lives.
Yeah.
And that would make difference. And then they go and make a difference to someone else's life. So even if it's just one person, like you've said, 2 people, 2 people there have had a positive experience. Yeah. And it makes a massive difference.
We've got 68 million people in this country. Can you imagine if every person every day did one nice thing?
Yep.
It doesn't have to be give £1,000 or give £100,000 or give your house away. Just do something nice. Stop and, when you're in the tube, offer to carry someone's suitcase for them. Just do something nice.
There's an organizer. I can't remember what they're called. I was at a business breakfast thing, and there was people there, but they've got these cards, and it's pay it forward.
Pay it forwards. Yeah.
I can't remember what they're called. And my girlfriend Sean is a teacher, and she knows the organization. She knows the guy who started it up. He lives in Derby somewhere.
Not the Pay It Forwards Foundation.
It's not that. No, I can't remember what it's called. I'll find out. I've got the cards. And it's basically like if you're in a queue buying a coffee, you buy the person behind you a coffee and give them the card. And then you say, right, now you give that card to someone else when you do something for them. Yeah. And you can go on the website and write it on anonymously that somebody did this for me. So I'm now going to, and it's great.
No, I was just in Copenhagen for a few days with my girlfriend. And I saw Denmark is purportedly one of the happiest countries. A guy in a restaurant who I was chatting to about this said, "Oh no, we're not. It's just that in Denmark, it's culturally inappropriate to complain. So we just don't complain." He said, "We're equally unhappy." A fascinating bloke. He was a senior official in the government, and he was a lovely, lovely man. That's an attitude of mind, and it's the same thing. So failure is not an option. The third thing is actually also germane to this, and you'll see a common theme through my 5 rules. It's be with people who make you laugh and who you can make laugh. Because if you're having fun, you'll never do a day's work in your life. If you're having fun doing what you do, I love the privilege of being a doctor. I love it. And some people have been critical and said, "You're laughing at people who are sick." No, I'm not laughing at people who are being sick. I like to think of myself as a compassionate and caring man. I laugh at the absurdity of life. And I found that if you're feeling, listen, I was out last night with my mate who's just had major cancer surgery. He's lost a kidney. And most of the evening we were making jokes about, what might have happened to his kidney. And he said to me that the surgeon knew his onions. I said, yes, but does he know his steak and kidney? So be with people who make you laugh. The second one is learn something new every day. Because the more you learn, people say, oh, your brain's like a muscle. It's actually nothing like a muscle. But if you're using your brain, you're inspiring yourself and others. And the first rule is the most important one, the no arsehole rule. Don't be with people who are arseholes, because I don't know if everyone spent every minute of every day only doing what they wanted to do. People say, oh, you're full of shit, right? We don't have that luxury. Yes, you do. If you want to make a huge salary, maybe you have to tolerate it, but that's choose your pain. As my friend Bob Patmore says, if your choice is more important, do that. I have friends who've chosen to have a very bohemian life. A mate of mine lives in a very humble house in Thailand. It's a beach house, effectively, a shack. But what's important to him is scuba diving and being chill and meditating and doing yoga. That's his thing. He could probably make £1 million a year, but he doesn't want to.
There's a parable story, whatever you want to call it, about that. The fisherman in a village, isn't there? Who's like he's just sitting by on a deck chair or something like that by the sea, and someone from New York is on holiday there or something, and they're like, yeah, I think we've heard the story before, haven't we?
Yeah.
But, and it's like. What you could do is, because he goes out fishing, he gets enough fish for his family, and he sells some in town, and that's how he earns his living. And he's like, yeah, but you could get a fleet of boats and all that, and then you could move to New York and float it on the stock exchange and all that sort of stuff. And he's like, yeah, but then what would I do? And he's like, well, then you can go on holiday. And he's like, well, that's what I'm doing now.
That's exactly right. Never live your life by somebody else's standards, and never judge other people by your standards. You can't change people. Let it go. Don't be angry. Anger is not good for you. If you're in from a putting on my medical hat, we have two nervous systems, right? And our autonomic nervous system I know you guys know about, you got sympathetic tone, parasympathetic tone. If you're in sympathetic fight, flight, or freeze mode, your heart is racing, your blood pressure's through the roof, you're diverting blood away from your, good parts of your body, and you're shortening your life.
Right. I never know why it's called sympathetic, right? Because it doesn't sound very sympathetic. However, I've literally just had this thought, just thinking about it there, is that sympathy doesn't work anyway. It doesn't help anyone. Empathy does. Sympathy doesn't. So therefore, it's actually named quite well, I think, because sympathy doesn't help you. It just keeps you in the place where you are. Because people go, who are you? And you go like...
I mean, it's an evolutionary derived mechanism to help you escape an existential threat to your existence, right?
Yeah, to hide.
To fight, fight or freeze, And then the parasympathetic is rest, digest, and let nature do the rest.
Yeah.
People talk about, difficulties in their sex life, but... Well, it's no bloody surprise. Your brain is up your ass, literally. You've got to be in the right frame of mind. I truly think that it's not people mistake health for length of time you're on the planet, right? I do think that there is a direct parallel that people who have their shit together, that they do live a longer life, but more importantly, they live a healthier life.
Yeah.
And that's mental health as well as physical health.
There's something you said earlier. So there's two things. Have you read Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl?
Oh, many times.
Of course you have. I knew you would have done. I thought I'd ask the question. But I've actually got it on my website. The Walkbath website is, if you find your purpose, then you can overcome any challenge that life throws at you, right? That's what it is, right? And then he says, own the gap as well. So the gap between stimulus and response. The wider you can make that gap, and the more you can own that gap, the better you'll feel. And you were talking about I've been through a divorce as well, like 10, 11 years ago. And the funny thing is, at the time it was horrible, but now I look back on it and I'm thankful of that happening, because I learned a hell of a lot from it. And it's helped with my relationship with Sean now. And I remember seeing a greetings card about, like, I wish I'd have met you earlier, because then I could have spent more of my life with you, right? And I've said to Sean, I'm glad I didn't meet you earlier, because I would have fucked that up as well.
I 100% agree with you, Pete. It's, I was asked to be on a panel at a business school in Virginia, the Darden Business School, and there were 4 of us on the panel. It was about entrepreneurialism. It's easy for me to say. And I had these prepared remarks. The way it worked out, I was going to be on last. So the first 3 folks spoke, and they were all eloquent and fascinating and really interesting people. And then I came up and I made a big show of tearing up my notes. And so I'm not going to talk about this. I said, you've heard what success looks like. I'm going to tell you about failure. And I'm going to tell you what I learned from my failures, because I've never learned anything from my successes. They happen because I had the good fortune to be with people who were smarter and better looking than me. I was lucky. It was good timing. I mean, if I'd stayed in London, my role in the history of laparoscopic and robotic surgery wouldn't have been written. Someone else would have done it. Someone else, because developments in science are always the work of many, many people, and they come to a nadir, and it just happens to be this one writes that paper or is invited to that meeting. Had I stayed in London and listened to the boss who said that you're full of shit, basically, I wouldn't have had the career I had. I'd have had a different career. I'd have had a different life. And so, learning from when things go wrong and letting stuff go. I love that, the space between, the stimulus and the response. My heritage is the same as Frankel's, and people from my extended family did not come out the other side of the war. And I used to have conversations with my dad, who wouldn't sit in a German car, wouldn't have a German radio, wouldn't drink German wine. And I used to say to him, you're missing the point. That was a set of circumstances. And that can be reproduced anywhere in the world. And sadly, I'm right about that. And it's understanding that and being teachers to people and saying, look at this set of circumstances. This is what we know. It's like tapping the patella tendon. The knee is going to, we know what's going to happen. And human beings have this astonishing ability to forget that and not look at that. Hey, smoking's bad for you. No shit, Sherlock. So now people are vaping.
I know.
How do you go? You're both into fitness. I cannot walk down the street. And mobile phones, that's the other thing. I've got to check the ICD-10 to see if there is a code for sore foot because some nimnod walked into me while looking at their phone.
Yeah.
I'm becoming a grumpy old man because I walk down the street and if I see someone coming towards me doing this, I will not change my trajectory.
No. Why should you?
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I think about this a lot because I told you I was a trader back like years ago, and the economy goes in cycles as well. So there was the South Sea bubble in the 1700s or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And the economy goes in like 20-year, 60-year, 100-year cycles, doesn't it? And every now and then there's a massive shake up. Like the Great Depression was 100 years ago, and we went through something not quite that, but we've been going through something for a while. And it's like it is just forgetting because like I think the generation that live it, there's then the next generation who hear it from that generation, but then the next generation, grandkids and that are like, no, we now know it's not within living memory. And then certainly the next generation, it'll all happen again, which is about 100 years, I think. So it just keeps going through cycles and you can read history books and everything. And then people go, yeah, but that was then. We know better now. And it all happens again. It's mad.
George Santayana, American philosopher, said that he who cannot recall history is condemned to repeat it. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's like, we were talking before about diet fads. I mean, oh, come on, peeps, get a grip. We know what doesn't. Let's see. The one that gets me is the paleo diet. Let's eat like cavemen and women. Well, I think you'll find that people in ancient times, pre-Bronze Age, probably had a lifespan of 25 or 26 years. So,
they also didn't eat much almond flour, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure about that.
Yeah. Do you know how many calories will be in almond flour? I mean, like, gee.
In terms of your 5 rules for life that you've got, Jonathan, when did you devise these, or when did you sort of solidify them? Was it post divorce and things like that, or was it something that you've had for quite a while? Was it when you had that period of your life?
I've mentioned it before, but shout out to Dove Barron. Dove, really, really helped me think through many, many things, and he was the inspiration for it, and he gave me all these tasks to do. People talk about going to therapy, and when you have a major life event and you're trying to make sense of it and you're trying to understand it and you're questioning your own behaviors and the circumstances that led to it. And I didn't find that to be terribly satisfying because people would say, tell me about your childhood. And it's like, well, how the hell does that help me? This guy was really provocative. And he gave me tasks. And one of them was come up with some rules to live your life by. And I was like, I don't know where to start. And he said, yes, you do. What makes you feel good? What does not make you feel good? And I said, well, I feel best when I'm laughing. Duh. He said, well, okay, then structure that into a rule. What aspect of your life? I'm an atheist, but I have a Jewish heritage, and one element of that is a commitment to education. So, and I got that. My dad was a working class East End boy who left school at 12, and he said to me, "Whatever you do, don't do what I did. Don't sew buttons." When his dad died when he was 12, he started working in a button factory in the East End, and he got paid based on how many buttonholes he made. And he said, "Don't sew buttons." When I came to him and said, "Great news, Dad, I've decided I'm going to be a doctor," and he went, "I told you don't sew buttons." I said, "I'm going to be a surgeon, Dad." He said, "Exactly. You're going to sew buttons." What he meant was do something that uses your brain. So I've had a lifelong love of learning, and endeavor to read a minimum of one book every week. And it was really Dove who helped me, and anyone who's interested is dovbaron.com, dovbaron.com. You should have him on your podcast. Fascinating bloke. And he came up with this concept of the emotional source code, that we're sort of programmed to behave in a certain way. Basically, I think what Dove got me to do is think about how you live your life, think about the things that satisfy you, gratify you, fulfill you, and use those as your guidelines. Another one he did was with relationships. He said, put together your non-negotiables, your highly desirables, and your nice to haves. And after 2 hours, I called him. He lives in Vancouver. I called him back and said, "Dove, all I've come up with so far is must like barbecued steak." And he said, "You're an idiot, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Think about your relationships with other people. When are you happy with other people? When do you feel like when you part that you can't wait to see that person? Whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship." And I ended up, once I started writing, I couldn't stop, because he said, think about your lived experience. The reason, he said to me, "What percentage of relationships fail?" When you think about it, nearly all of them fail.
Yeah.
Because if we have romantic relationships, how many do we have in our life that don't endure? Why do they not endure? It's because we're with the wrong person. We think that's perfectly acceptable. That's dating. That's how you learn. But if you haven't got a process of learning what is and isn't acceptable, you'll make the same mistake again and again and again and again.
Do you think as well, like what Pete said earlier, and you've said it, and I know it's making me think about my own life and my experience, that I've had, a number of long-term relationships in my life, and I'm 48 this year. But the reason why the one I'm in at the moment, and hopefully will be in for the rest of my life, is so much better, is because, like you said, there's no such thing as failure, only feedback, or I don't lose, I learn. You develop and you learn and you become I don't want to use the term a better person, but maybe a better partner, or you learn more, and you kind of get to a stage in your life where, you are a better partner, and you recognize that, don't you, I suppose?
Yeah, I think that's right. It's a willingness to be humble. It's a willingness um, to accept. Again, going back to what you said, Pete, the space between stimulus and response, and how do you think about it? And sometimes you feel the urge to react, and you go, "Oh, I remember that. That's bullshit. That's the old me talking." Um, how am I going to respond to that? You can apply it to simple things like you're in the car and someone is a jerk. And I was driving recently. I was going round a roundabout. It was night. It was raining. And I was going to turn left. And I saw at the last minute a car coming up the inside. And our cars brushed. We immediately stopped on the roundabout. He got out. I got out. There was no damage. There was zero damage. And his first reaction was I'm a little guy, I'm like 5'9". His first reaction was to say, "Were you trying to cut me off?" And he then said, "Are you okay?" Because I didn't come out swinging. Right? It's a car. If it was scratched, big deal.
Yeah.
There was zero. His reaction then was, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine. Are you okay?" And it changed into a personably a per what's the word I'm looking for? It
Personable.
turned a concern of two human beings. Are you
Mm,
okay? No
mm.
harm, no foul. Who gives a shit whose fault it was?
That's weird because it's environment, isn't it? People in cars, people are more angry than they are. Or you wouldn't. I think of it on the street. Someone walks towards you with a mobile phone or whatever. Or you walk. You kind of. You might get out of the way. You might not. Whatever. But people are more. People are nicer to each other in person on the street than they are in the car because there's that barrier there, isn't it? It's like online. People are horrible online, but you meet them in real life and they're not.
They would never say the things they say
Exactly.
online.
And
Yeah.
cars make a massive difference with that, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's funny though, because everything we've just been talking about there's a few things like what you said about therapy. And I don't know, I've never been to a therapist. I don't know anything about therapy, but I've got a mentor guy who helps in the States who helps me out with stuff. And
That's
his wife,
therapy.
yeah, exactly. And his wife was a clinical therapist with kids, and she's now she does other stuff anyway. But they've got a lot of things that they say. And his view on therapy is kind of like what you said. They go back to like, what did you do when as a child and all that, and it holds you where you are, talking about the thing, trying to make sense of the thing that's got you to where you are now. And it's like, yeah, but that's got me here. What's going to get me there? What's going to get me further on? So they have a lot of she's called Carrie Campbell, and she has a saying that the story that you tell is the truth you know. So whatever you say is your story from here on. That's what you're going to live.
Fantastic.
If you're looking back all the time and saying this is where I've come from, you're going to keep repeating that.
Mhm.
And it brings up the Jung quote, the Carl Jung quote of what was it? I've forgotten it now because I use this all the time as well. It's like unless you bring the subconscious or unconscious, I can't remember how he describes it, but unless you bring the unconscious to the conscious mind, it will rule your life and you will call it fate.
Mhm.
And that's the thing. Like in a car, subconsciously, you're just like it was your fault. And then when you get out, your conscious brain kind of comes and it's like that's a human being in front of me. So yeah.
It's like the way I've thought about it is the car is like an exoskeleton, right? There's the squishy human being inside, but it's an exoskeleton. And if you use that analogy for behaviors in life, when you're not in your car, but your car is, if you will, your position of authority. My car is, I'm a professor. Everyone around me. So yesterday, I'm currently working on a project in neurosurgery, and I was at a very famous hospital watching an operation, so I can learn from this guy how he does this operation. It's not an operation I ever used to do, and this guy is a very, very prominent individual, and I watched the way that he treated his staff, and this is a classy guy, right? He did not behave. There was no exoskeleton. He was warm, he was human, he was connected, he was kind, he was engaged, and the response he got from people, was wonderful because they felt valued and valuable. So if people just think how you are in your car, think how you are whether it's your position in society or in your family unit or with your friends, just get rid of the car and just be real. Just keep it real.
Love
I
it.
think that's brilliant. That really ties back into what you were saying earlier about the trying to leave the world a better place. Trying to do something positive or friend or kind to someone every day. And just like you say, it's. I think we'll wrap up there, Jonathan. I mean, on the first visit it's been lovely. I mean, totally. I don't know what I expected, but totally probably not what I expected. But it was a really meaningful, lovely conversation with you. So thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you very much for having me, guys. Lovely meeting you, and I'll look forward to chatting sometime over a small adult beverage. That's right.
Or like coffee.
Coffee.
Yeah.
No almond milk.
No almond
God, no.
No almond milk. Thank you so much. And yeah, it would be we all this. I mean, we've got so much we could talk about. Obviously, gut health, diet, all that kind of stuff. The more, focused, I suppose. But this was brilliant just to get to know you and get to know your philosophy on life, which I think is amazing. So thank you so much.
What James has just inadvertently done is a bullseye thing there of let's have a look at what you could have won, but we'll talk about something else.
By the way, I have to tell you, I love your logo. The sort of David Bowie throwback with the avocado. It's brilliant. Do you have T-shirts?
We do. We've got T-shirts and hoodies. And it's also it's the podcast mic as well. So
I got avocado. That. Cool.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, no, we do. Yeah, and
I'm gonna go online and buy one, and everyone listening buy one too.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Lovely meeting you guys.
Brilliant. Thank you everybody for watching or listening. Please do like, share, subscribe, leave a review if you're watching or listening on a platform that allows you to do so, especially Apple Podcasts, and give us a subscribe on YouTube. We will be back next week with episode 291. Thank you, Jonathan.
All the best, guys. Bye now.
Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.